Rebecca agreed to a short interview about her activity and some of the workshops that she does. So here's the first question. Could you tell us a few words about you and about your career?
Sure. I'm one of those old object people. I started out doing software and did my first object-oriented programming in the 1980s. I worked at Smalltalk at Tektronix. So I was involved, I was the software manager at the group that first developed and put out the commercial Smalltalk product. So for the last 20 some years, I've been doing object-oriented things, and I still find that even though a lot of the applications I see today are not nearly so beautiful and elegant as Smalltalk, that I can take a lot of that good design thinking and apply it as I work on, enterprise applications in Java or C# or something else. Yeah.
Okay. I've learned that you are from Portland, so I know that the Portland software community is very interesting and vibrant. Could you tell us how it influenced you?
Well, it still influences me. But yeah, the Portland community is where I would say the first commercial object-oriented platform started. And some of the early Smalltalk application programmers were people that you might know as being famous folks like Cunningham and Kent Beck. In fact, they were the users of our first Smalltalk system. So I was influenced a lot by, I was developing the Smalltalk platform. I wasn't writing applications, but I was really influenced a lot by the good applications programmers and how they approached problem solving in an environment like that. So that had a big influence on me and led me to write my book about responsibility-driven design, where I observed what good thinking and problem-solving skills those kind of people had. But more recently, and Word is still doing interesting things, by the way. His latest federated wiki is a very interesting idea that he's working on. So I still am in contact with people like Cunningham, but there's a really vibrant Agile community in the Portland area too. For the past few years, we've been holding an open space where 150 people get together, and I learn a lot from that community as well. So okay. I've had a lot of influence, ongoing and from the past.
Okay, that's very interesting. You mentioned your book on responsibility-driven design. You actually wrote two books, one on design object-oriented software and the other one with object design. Where do you see these books and techniques apply in the modern software development?
So yeah, they were written in the last century, that's true. But I just got a royalty check from Addison Wesley, and so I'm still selling the second book. I'm still getting copies of the second book. I actually think that a lot of the more driven methodologies like test-driven development and domain-driven design have their roots and influences in responsibility-driven thinking. So I find that adding in testing practices to work on your design, or adding a rich domain model using responsibility-driven design principles is a very natural kind of thing. So when I teach classes or work with people, I sort of blend my responsibility thinking into any practice that I use. So it hasn't gone away. It's just it augments the way you can think about systems. So.
Okay. Now, you form many of your ideas and opinions before Agile became a thing. So, how do your ideas about architecture and design relate to Agile software development?
Um, so Agile development has been something that people have practiced before the Agile Manifesto came around. In fact,
Mhm.
um, when people were talking about what really distinguishes Agile development from other kinds of development, it was really a set of values. I favor open communications over this. Um, uh, Documents that no one wants to read, and I favor collaboration over. So these values have been around for a long time. And actually, the way that I have developed software with small teams and with a very tight connection to people who really want what we're doing have been part of what Agile has been about before we put a label on it.
Okay.
However, I do think that when I work with um, larger companies that aren't so agile, sometimes um, they tend to do things just because they have to do things. So, oh, we need to create the documents, we need to do this. So, from my fundamental background of developing systems in collaborative ways, I've tried to carry this forward into doing design and architecture in
Mhm.
a more agile way. And I think that um, I can do good design in a very agile way, as long as I'm aware that uh, I need to think about design. So putting those together has been just a really very powerful thing for me. I wish more companies would do that.
Okay. Um, a difficult question now. What do you think a software architect should do?
Well, so maybe it's what they shouldn't do.
Okay.
Uh, my friend Johanna Rothman has this great definition of what she calls a seagull architect. I don't know if you know about seagulls, but they're these birds
Yeah.
that are on the water, and they, when you have some food that's there, or they see some fish, they will squawk in loudly, come in, eat the fish, fight with each other, and then leave, right? If there's no more food. And so she says a seagull architect is someone who comes in, lands on the problem of the system, just fights around for a while, and then leaves without doing much other than maybe leaving some poop on the ground as well as after fighting. So an architect that sort of swoops in, pronounces, this is good or this is the way you should do it, and leaves, is a seagull architect. And in some sense, that's not what a software architect working particularly with agile teams should be doing at all. They should be part of the team, whether they're there full time or not. They should get their hands dirty, not just pronouncing what has to be done. In fact, being able to look at code or create code is, I think, a fundamental skill that architects should still keep going, whether they're the best
Mhm.
programmer on the team or not. So for me, an architect should not, particularly on an agile project, just be someone who drops in and then leaves. So they should be part of the team. They should be also communicating what are the real risks and figuring out what's going on and helping find out what the business needs and putting that into the team as well. So it's a very difficult job when where you're not just totally, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you could just be totally programming, but you've got to be that bridge between the business and your code and the system as it grows. So it's a very cool job.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting actually, but it also sounds very hard.
It is, yeah, I would say.
Um, if we go to developers now, I've often seen developers who know very little about design and architecture. And this seems to me like a problem in many projects. How much design should a developer know and how much architecture?
So that's actually an interesting question because I'm teaching a class right now over a period of weeks with people who are programmers that are supposed to become leaders in their company. And they've been programming maybe 5 years or so. And it's surprising to me how little design they do know. Because essentially, everyone who starts out as a junior developer starts out with some existing code, right, that's already there, pretty much, and they're just adding to it, pretty much. They don't build anything from scratch, so that they don't understand the principles of architecture or design. If they do, they think it's all that theoretical stuff that's in books, right? And they're just dealing with day-to-day coding. However, at some point in their career, they realize that if they want to get better at what they do need to know some good design principles. What does it really mean to hide details? Or what does it mean for a single responsibility, to, oh gee, I'm just writing this code and I'm making this big awful class. How do I factor it out? And so I think that, most developers, after they get there for a while, they realize, yeah, I can do stuff, but I really need to be able to make these decisions and get cleaner code faster, and then they get motivated to learn about design and good design patterns. But so I think they should know it, but it's sort of, it shouldn't be a theoretical base. It should be driven by, gee, I'm not doing it as well as I think I could be. It's too hard. Now what can I do?
Yeah,
It's got to be very practical.
I see. Well, last year in Timisoara, you taught a workshop on Agile Architecture. Can you tell us more about this particular workshop and how was it in Timisoara?
I enjoyed my time in Timisoara very much. I hope to come back to Romania and see it in the springtime this year. The workshop was a very positive experience for me because I got to interact with people who, well, this is about architecture, so people had opinions that were in the class, in the workshop. They had strong opinions, even about a made-up problem, which was really great because we learned a lot of things in that workshop about how do I argue and defend ideas? How do I sketch out architecture to other stakeholders? How do I minimize risk on a project that goes for a period of time? What kind of tasks would I identify as being architecturally significant and different ways that we could make those visible on an Agile project? There are several different ways. So it was really a good experience for both me and the class because I always love working with opinionated people with strong opinions are great. But also people who care about Agile development. So it was sometimes in Agile development, architecture is given this role of, oh, those just must be squawky people who aren't doing anything. So I really tried to have activities that would fit in with the rest of the project. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What did you think about the class? You were there too.
Yes, I was there. It was really nice. So I've learned especially I love the idea of landing zones. And this was
Hmm. Hmm.
one very interesting topic because I kind of did things that way, but I didn't think of landing zones.
Yeah, so
As a
so these
metaphor.
yeah, there were a number of techniques that we talked about and got to practice in the class that allow you to think about the requirements that are architecturally significant, that maybe affect performance or scalability or whatever kind of quality of the architecture you're wanting to do in an agile way. So like, for example, the notion of landing zone where you have minimally acceptable and, gee, this would be a great kind of requirement value for something. Traditionally, people have used it in a very, you know, rigid way that isn't agile. We set these up at the beginning of a project and they're there and we have to hit those values. But I have found that if I'm trying to be agile, I want to take the most important criteria for a particular release. Let's say I'm doing a longer project, and then think about as I'm going on in time and I'm adding more stories and implementing more features to perhaps recalibrating. And that it's okay because we are being agile about
Yeah.
our criteria. And
And
so I think a lot of these techniques that I talked about in the workshop were things that can be used in an agile way. And some people may say, oh no, yeah, gee, they're just a zone. It sounds like I have to hit right there. That's what's very agile about that. No. So
yeah.
that was kind of nice to
And we
do
also
that.
had the typical conversation about emergent design and how much design you should do upfront for an agile project.
Yeah,
Much
and the
more
answer is
than.
the answer is that depending it depends as all consultants know. If I'm doing something totally new, um, it's I might want to do some investigation before I commit major resources. That may or may not be throwaway. This depends on your goals. But if I'm doing something that's ongoing development, then probably upfront investigation is not worth. It may increase risk rather than reduce it.
Yeah. Okay, so this year we scheduled a new workshop in Romania, Skills for the Agile Designer. Can you tell us more about the workshop and why should it be interesting for Romanian developers and architects?
Yeah, well, so this one is more focused on what I might do as a person who is doing ongoing development and have to think about design or good structure of my code and my tests as I go over time. And I'm working in a team of people who may or may not agree with me. And so going to introduce some techniques there that can help you understand and explain and talk about design options. Um, Oftentimes, when I have to implement a story, uh, it isn't just a very simple add-on, but there may be several cases that I need to consider. So one of the techniques that we're going to be working on is commonality variability analysis. So I can know how to structure my code and my design in a way that supports what the business flexibility is rather than just me inventing stuff. Um,
Mm,
uh, so there's a number of techniques there that we're going to introduce that helps teams that are working on day in day out kind of development where occasionally, well, what happens when I don't know what to do? What do I do in a design spike? How might I do CRC card modeling effectively?
mhm.
Um, how might I make trade-offs? How might I track technical debt for every sprint? Realistically track it.
Yeah.
And what kinds of, when I have different kinds of challenges that aren't just normal, should I take those off the, the iterative sprint cycle, and what do I do with different kinds of problems that crop up? So it's a good set of techniques for people that are trying to do very productive agile development, but need to consider design activities occasionally while they're working on it.
Okay, I see.
It's
Okay,
a good
so
complement to the agile architecture. Architects can show up as long as they're wanting to get their hands dirty in,
I
in the
see.
design activities. Yeah, so they're welcome to.
Makes sense. Okay, you'll be a speaker at the I.T.A.K.E conference in Bucharest at the end of May. Could you tell us what attracted you at this event?
Well, I like unconferences or conferences where there are open space times too, so I can just have a spontaneous conversation about some topic. I also like conferences where people are, so that's one aspect of I.T.A.K.E is for people who are not familiar with that, they kind of say, oh, what could happen if we schedule some time where there's just sessions where nothing's there? And that's actually, sometimes magical things can happen in those sessions. You can talk about your testing challenges and just have a great conversation, for example. You might have had a speaker off giving a talk, and then you come to the open space part of it, and you just get a really interesting conversation. So I like conferences that have part of it that's unstructured about that. I also like about I.T.A.K.E is that this is a code-focused conference. So it's not, just people waving their hands in the air and talking about theory. So that's challenged me as a speaker to bring some code examples and talk about them as well. So I always get a lot out of conferences that are practical and also give a bit of time for, spontaneous conversations to happen that can really be very, very helpful in your career. So,
Okay.
and it's also going to be springtime, right? You promise?
Yes. Well, Bucharest, at the end of May, it can be kind of spring or kind of summer, so
Uh-oh.
it depends.
Uh-oh.
It can be quite warm.
Okay. So it could be too warm. Okay. Hopefully it'll be spring.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Rebecca, very much. This was a very interesting discussion, and I hope I will see you soon in Bucharest and Timisoara to share your knowledge with the developers from Romania, and probably not only from Romania.
Yeah.
There are
Great.
many European developers registering for I.T.A.K.E as well.
So what other countries do you have people coming from you're hoping to get?
Germany, France, these are the two largest, and then UK. Yeah,
That's great.
until
Yeah.
now. Bulgaria.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so our common language will be the code, right?
Yes, and English.
In English, okay. I'm okay. Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I hope I will see you soon in
Okay, take
Romania.
care, Alex.
Bye.